Are we live?
We will be in about 10 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready.
All right. And live from the Tech.mn YouTube channel, here's your host, Kevin McArdle.
Thank you very much, Jack Stark. This is new, live on YouTube.
Yeah, we're trying something new.
A little scary.
Yeah.
I said earlier, I have a face for podcasting, so I'm not sure this is a good idea. But
don't be so hard on yourself.
I've also said before, I trust your judgment. So we'll see how this goes. Is it up to 1 million subscribers on YouTube yet? Are we close?
Almost there. So
Almost
if you haven't subscribed to the Tech.mn YouTube channel, go do so right now. You can push us right over that 1 million mark.
Yep. It's like PewDiePie, Dude Perfect, Tech.mn. I think we're third in the pecking order of like most subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty exciting. So,
yeah.
Not trying to, it's a humble brag.
Well, it's that time of year again. We are quickly approaching Twin Cities Startup Week, and we have Casey Schultz, the new executive director, here with us. Welcome, Casey.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited that I'm the first YouTube live presenter, so I'll try not to mess it up. Or host or guest as it was.
Yes, yeah. So welcome, yeah. So we're getting into a habit of having you on late August or early September as we lead into Startup Week. Jack mentioned new executive director for Beta and Twin Cities Startup Week. So why don't we talk through just kind of what's changed since the last time you were on the podcast with your role, with the team at Beta, so on and so forth.
Yeah, what hasn't changed, Kevin? I mean, I think that's probably the story of 2020 for everybody. So Reed Robinson, co-founder of Beta and Twin Cities Startup Week, stepped in as the executive director for about 1.5 years with the goal of growing the organization to be able to sustain a permanent team. And I was lucky to be part of that growth. And I came on as a director of Twin Cities Startup Week last year, and luckily kind of learned the ropes by working with Reed, and was able to step in as the executive director this year, which was amazing timing because then COVID-19 hit, and we're an events-based nonprofit. So that's been a really interesting, rapid learning experience of like, how do you run a nonprofit and completely change everything you've done in the past? Luckily, I've been fortunate to hire an amazing team. So Kelly Buell is our operations lead. Jihan Belavan is our entrepreneur in residence. And we have Ario Odaya running marketing and communications for us. So between that core team, some really amazing contractors like Benjamin Van Sistine, who does all of our production. I know you guys know him pretty well. We're just fortunate that we have the team that it takes to be able to adapt in these crazy times. And we quickly pivoted. Our cohort went virtual almost immediately. We were able to take Beta Showcase virtual, and that went really well. And we're just learning so many lessons along the way. So it almost is like the crescendo into Twin Cities Startup Week. We've been making all these changes and learning lessons and learning from our mistakes. And I'm sure there will be plenty that happen during Twin Cities Startup Week, but at least we won't be making the same mistakes twice. So we feel like we're uniquely positioned to be putting on, transitioning Twin Cities Startup Week to its new virtual format for 2020.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have a high degree of confidence that this year's Startup Week, despite all the challenges and the uniqueness of 2020, hopefully it's unique to 2020 and doesn't spill into next year. God help us.
Oh my God, I'm knocking on all the wood that I can see. Like, please go away.
But given that this team has for several years been producing the second biggest Startup Week in the world, as far as we know, who better than this team to adapt and pivot and produce a virtual Startup Week? And we referenced it, but Casey, you were on about this time last year. Jack will reference it in the show notes. You and the aforementioned Reed Robinson, where we went over your whole story, the quick version. You were a fly-in participant 2 years ago, then got the job to run Startup Week. And again, quick review for those 3 people listening to this podcast that don't know, Beta runs both a cohort of founders, new to startups looking to learn and grow their business. So that's one segment of the business. And then the other big segment of the business is Twin Cities Startup Week itself. So now as the executive director, you are responsible for both of those things, or the whole umbrella, I guess, versus last year, you were focused pretty much on the Startup Week experience. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. So Beta, we're a nonprofit focused on accelerating the success of Minnesota-based startups. And we have been doing this since 2013 in one form or another, and we operate as a startup. And I think that's really been a great service to us of rapid iteration. Like, we are using all the tools and techniques that we teach the startups that come through our cohort, and like lean startup methodology. We have to test a bunch of stuff, what's working, what's not working, adapt as quickly as possible. And so in some ways it's good that we had this foundation already as part of a curriculum that we teach other companies, and we're able to essentially eat our own dog food. I don't like that phrase, but it just seemed for 2020, it's appropriate. We're like,
well, and the way I would put, I think operating as a startup with entrepreneurial people and an entrepreneurial sort of set of core values, it does bring some authenticity to what you're doing. And without naming names, there are other groups in the cities or the state of Minnesota that do good work to try to help the startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem, but they don't run like startups themselves, either based on their funding or their people or the way that they operate. And it's just, it's a different deal. So one of the, Jack has said on the podcast before, we're good friends of the Beta crew. And I think it's because of that alignment of and authenticity of, you are operating like a startup, so you know what it is like to help the people that you are trying to help. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a meaningful differentiator from some of the other groups in the city. So before we get into Startup Week specifics, we're talking through new faces, new changes. There's also been some changes past and coming in the future with the board. Do you want to talk through that?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. We're actually about to make some big announcements. So we, you caught me on my flat-footed here. So Beta as an organization was founded by 3 white guys. And let's just call it what it is. Let's just call it what it is.
So we mentioned Reed, just for completeness, who are the other 2?
So Ryan Brochard and Justin Cox.
Yeah, Ryan's been on the podcast. He's now focused on Matchstick Ventures. So we'll reference that episode in the show notes. Justin's been a little bit more in the background as far as I've observed, just mainly kind of Reed and Ryan push it forward in the last few years.
I think Justin has his own thing going on. So he, was part of the early organization of Beta, and now he is a supporter.
So when you joined, what did the board look like? So this is a year and a half ago, I suppose, when you...
Yes. So when I joined, the board consisted of Reed Robinson, Ryan Brochard, Chip Pearson, and I think Nels Pedersen was an observer. So 4 white guys who are all amazing. They're all great and they do good work and they're very passionate about the community. But I think as the organization has evolved and matured, we're realizing that we need to mature the board, we need to mature the team. And 2019 really was the first step in doing that. Reed setting up Beta in a way that we can sustain a full-time team through the fundraising that he did and the structures that he put in place. And then also, and now we're taking that work to the board. So we're really excited that Amy Pearson joined our board, and Allison Barman from formerly of the Bush Foundation joined our board, and Clarence Bethia of UPSI is on track to join our board. And we have, and so part of that is we also voted to increase the number of board seats so that we can make sure that we're setting a table that has room for all the diverse representation that exists in the Twin Cities. So We went from a 5-person board to a 7-person board, and we have one more board seat that we're currently trying to fill for 2020. And we're
Soon
talking to
announce
several
that.
people about that. Yeah. So if
And
anyone's
Amy
interested,
Pearson, just for completeness, Amy Pearson was an executive at Jamf for a long time. Jamf recently IPO'd and is now running an organization called Bootstrappers, which we can reference back. So Amy's you mentioned the other people's profiles, didn't want to leave that out. So still looking to fill that last board seat, it sounds like.
yes, yeah. So we have one more open board seat. If people are interested in learning more, shoot me an email, casey@beta.mn. Yeah, but it's exciting times. It's exciting we had been doing this work in the background, and we recognized it still wasn't enough. And then George Floyd happened, and it just accelerated it. And I don't want to say in a good way, but in like the best possible outcome of a terrible tragedy. The board stepped up. They were like, we have to address this. So we are making huge sweeping changes to Beta because, historically entrepreneurship, and I think Beta to a degree has really been seen as only friendly to like affluent white people, mostly white men. And then, women we're seeing more women, but it's, there's this barrier of entry. If you don't have your own capital, or you don't have a network of people with capital, and in recognizing that, we're really trying to address it and make up for past mistakes or like lack of action in the past, and then try to really make going forward, do a lot of work around anti-racism and diversity, equity, inclusion with everybody who goes through any sort of Beta programming. So
yeah, representation matters. So these feel like good moves at the board level, and I not knowing the numbers, but it seems like the cohorts have always been pretty good and representative of the diverse nature of Minnesota startups, but probably room for improvement there.
It's funny that our cohorts have actually been the best thing that we've done in that vein. I think we average 78% diverse founders through our last 4 cohorts. So, and now that is a blanket statement when you talk about diversity and you're lumping in women, people of color, LGBTQ. Our next steps there are, okay, let's parse it out and have specific goals to make sure that, if our community is 50% men and 50% women, our cohorts, we would like that to be reflected. If we have 23% of the Black community in the Twins, or 23% of our community is Black, we want to try to get that represented in our cohort. So we're setting some pretty clear, more not numerical. Sorry, I'm a little ill. I'm under the weather. So my brain is really foggy.
Like objective measurable goals.
Quantitative.
Numbers.
Like numbers.
Yeah.
So, just trying to hold ourselves accountable and understanding that we're not going to be able to do this big, huge change overnight, but we're doing all the baby steps that it takes to Beta. Our goal is to be a resource for all entrepreneurs in Minnesota, and we have to make sure that we're doing the work on our end to create space and make it inviting to all entrepreneurs. So we recognize that we have some work to do.
Everybody does, but I think kudos to yourself and the board for making some meaningful changes. So I think you referenced a virtual cohort let's talk about kind of what's the latest with the Beta cohort that's in flight right now before we get into Startup Week. So how many companies are we talking about, and what stage are you? Are you doing 2 cohorts a year? Is that right?
Yeah, I cannot believe that we kept all of our programming for 2020, Kevin.
It's impressive.
We did not cut anything. Yes. So our spring cohort just wrapped up. We had our spring showcase happened in July due to COVID. And that was, I think at the end of the day, we had 13 companies go through that. And the showcase actually worked out well because we were able to invite more greater Minnesota companies to showcase who didn't have to travel to the Twin Cities because it was virtual. So we had like 10 greater Minnesota showcase companies showcase. And we are in the process of selecting our fall cohort right now. So applications closed last week. We're sending it out to our selection committee. And again, the selection committee is a great example of us also recognizing that decisions for beta often happen in like a black box, and people are like, how do you decide what companies come in and who's representing these companies? So we expanded our selection committee this year to include Clarence Bethia again from UPSI, Andrew Leone from Dispatch, Caroline Karanja from 26 Letters, myself, and Jihan Belaban, our entrepreneur in residence. So in the past, it's really just been the beta team selecting companies, and we recognize that there should probably be more founder representation making these decisions. So, and especially from people who have gone through the program and are in various stages with their own companies.
Yeah,
so
that seems like a good move. So that will be announced shortly, I assume, because one of the big highlights of Twin Cities Startup Week is always the beta showcase for that cohort. And for those not familiar, the way beta rolls, you showcase the companies at the start of their experience, right? It's not like a demo. Whether it's accelerators or incubators, there's like a demo day at the end of the thing, at the end of the experience. But beta, you showcase the companies at the beginning. So that will be sometime during Startup Week, correct?
Yes. So beta showcase is on September. I have it all listed. September 16th, Wednesday, September 16th. And one of the things, if you've ever attended a showcase, it's usually a huge evening event with really, we call it a science fair for startups, where you get to walk around and meet all of the companies, and they have their booth set up, and there's t-shirts and beer and good music. And this year that's a little different. So we're moving it to a more afternoon, early evening time slot, because we recognize that people have kids at home, and people are, when it's virtual, it's a lot more difficult to attend during evening hours. So that's the fall showcase is actually from 2 to 5 p.m. on September 16th.
So that's one example of probably hundreds of changes or slight pivots you've had to make. Talk about when did you might remember even the day. When do you remember deciding like Startup Week is just not going to happen, business as usual this year?
I think I knew literally on like March 6th, the day we decided to take our cohort virtual. I was like, everything is going to be virtual this year. And that was I had been doing a ton of research. I'm a part of several, I'm part of a community or a conference organizer support group on Facebook, and I was just looking at like all the policies that were coming out from companies like Google and Microsoft, and some people might say, well, those are Silicon Valley companies that we don't really, we're Minnesota, it doesn't jive. And I'm like, but they're setting the precedent, and most companies are gonna follow suit, or they probably have access to a lot more information than we do. And they're using that information to make these decisions, because it's hard. The decisions they were making were costing them tens of millions of dollars, or in some case with Google, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm like, they know something. So I was like, and when they were saying they weren't going to have people travel for all of 2020, they weren't having people travel till 2021, I said, that's it. We're going to have to plan on going virtual this year. It's just, I don't know. That was my interpretation. And we as an organization were kind of trying to like straddle the line of, well, let's just push all of our spring stuff out. So that's why we had a bunch of stuff in July. And even when we were making that decision, it was the right decision, because we weren't prepared to go virtual with a big event in May. So I spent that time, like all of April, all of May, doing a ton of research on platforms, and I feel fortunate that we did that work, because lo and behold, summertime came, and it was just like, yep, everything still has to be virtual. So we, I'm feeling fortunate that we did have some vision there, and critical thinking. We're like, this just isn't gonna, and there's some wishful thinking. We're like, well, maybe we can pivot and do something in person. We always leave that door open, and we will have some socially distant events that happen for Startup Week this year, but it's 90% virtual. So it was a tough decision. It's a bummer because, you know, people get so much energy that sustains them throughout the year through these in-person events. And so our goal is like, how do we recreate that as much as possible so people are getting that connection to community, those networking opportunities. And those were the criteria that we were looking for when we were finding online platforms that could host large events like what we do.
And I want to dive into more about what people can expect this year, but can we take it back and do a quick recap of last year? Like, how many people were there? What were some of the most popular events?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last year was our largest year yet, which was super exciting. You know, once you add up all of the Startup Week adjacent events that happen, like Food Ag Ideas, Minova, BitCon, Minnesota Cup, we had over 19,000 registered attendees that came through the Twin Cities during that week. So that was really exciting. Yeah, we had over 200 events. I think the thing that I'm most proud of from last year is, again, like going back into this diversity, equity, inclusion vein, we made a rule that you had to, if you had a panel of 3 or more people, you had to have diverse representation. And we supported that by creating a subject matter expert directory where we're like, you know, sometimes it's hard to find somebody outside of your network to speak on a panel, but here's a bunch of people who opted in and are interested already. So, you know, not only making that mandate, but giving the resources to make it possible for people. And that led to 66% of our panels featuring female thought leaders and 49% of our panels featuring people of color who are thought leaders. So we're going to continue that trend into 2020 amongst other, we have a ton of DEI initiatives that we're doing this year, which I'm super excited about. I can talk about more later, but I think that was really exciting. And then selfishly, Beta Showcase was our largest ever. We had over 1,100 people come to Beta Showcase at the TCF Bank Stadium on the University of Minnesota campus. And it was, I know you guys were there. It was so fun. It was so fun. Yeah. Just that many people. It's such a beautiful venue.
Jaws, yeah.
But yeah, I think as far as our most popular events, you know, Coffee and Closers, which we have a big announcement that we're going to roll out this year about Coffee and Closers. So a little teaser for you, but Coffee and Closers was definitely very popular. And Jennifer Zick from, oh my gosh, my mind fog, not Creative Brands. Anyway, Jennifer Zick, who's an amazing local marketer. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Her session was, what?
You've been sick. It's forgiven.
Thank you. Yeah, I am sick. Her marketing session was really highly attended. So,
Authentic
you know, we got
Brand is Jennifer's
thank
company.
you. Oh my gosh,
You're
Authentic Brand. And she's coming back this year and she'll be on the main stage. So, you know, we looked at who got the highest ratings from events last year, and then we invited them back to be on our virtual main stage this year. So I'm really excited about the quality and just like production level of content that we're going to be able to harness this year.
So talk about this virtual main stage. And before you do, I was thinking about Startup Week, and like everybody else, like, oh, this is kind of a bummer that we won't be able to, you know, get together in venues and big groups. Like 1,100 people in the same place is just a bad idea.
Yes.
And it's against the rules. So like, get over it. It's not going to happen. So then I started thinking, well, actually, this could be an opportunity because, you know, I don't know the official mission of Startup Week, but unofficially, it seems like celebrate the startup community within Minnesota and promote it to the rest of the world. And for virtual events, so one of the challenges for me personally with Startup Week is there's so much cool stuff going on, you can't see it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there's an event in downtown St. Paul and there's also an event in downtown Minneapolis, and they're, you know, more than, you know, they're less than an hour apart, you got to pick which one you're going to, right? So virtual events that are maybe more focused and single threaded, it that may be an opportunity. I assume a lot more of these events will be recorded, or allow people not in the cities to participate in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before, or watch the recording after. Like, do you think this is actually an opportunity to get an even bigger audience?
We're definitely approaching it that way. So first of all, for 2020, we're really fortunate. Target and Cargill came back as headline or as strategic partners for Startup Week. So they're strategic sponsors. And then JP Morgan Chase came in this year also as a strategic partner, as a new sponsor. So between Target, Cargill, JP Morgan Chase making it possible, and then of course like track sponsors and stuff, we feel really fortunate that we were able to have the resources to take it virtual. So you're asking about what the format is going to be like this year. The whole mission of Twin Cities Startup Week is to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. So if you're Kevin working at a Fortune 500 company, and you have this wealth of experience, you've learned a ton on the job, but you see a problem that needs to be solved that could probably be a real product, and you're like, how do I do this? Like, how do I spin myself out of this large corporation, go and create this really meaningful company built around this problem that I see that all Fortune 500 companies have? I don't even know where to start. Well, hopefully Twin City Startup Week is the place that you come, you hear all the other success stories of people who are just like you, who saw a problem that needed to be solved, and they went out and they tell you how they did it. And then, once you get that inspiration and you start figuring out how to do it and you get traction, then we're so lucky in the Twin Cities that we have so many startup accelerators. Beta is just one of a dozen in Minnesota that are available to help entrepreneurs get their products off the ground or accelerate their products. So that's really our vision for Twin Cities Startup Week, is like, if we can inspire the person who creates the next Fortune 500 company in Minnesota, we're doing our job right. And it's a long game, right? Because it takes a while to get there. But we see, as adjacent to that, or as part of that, the number of connections that people make at Twin Cities Startup Week. So it's not just coming and getting inspired by content. I think the value really comes from connecting with a community and networking with people. And so those are the things that we are making sure that we're bringing into this virtual environment. We're using a platform called Hopin, which really does reflect, or as close as possible to a virtual, like if you were to go to a conference in person, you walk into the lobby, there's reception, you check in, and then there's probably something going on the main stage, and there's a bunch of sessions, smaller sessions happening in like breakout rooms, right? And then of course most conferences have a sponsor exposition hall where you can go and learn about new products that might be helpful to you. And just by being there and like running into people at the pastry table or the water cooler, you're networking. So Hopin really recreates that with all of those elements as part of it. So when I'm referencing the virtual main stage, we are, the content that is like a lot of panels and really like high production content is going to be on our main stage, and that's a one-to-many form. So the presenters will be on the main stage. People can interact on the chat, but you can't just like pop up and ask a question like you can in the sessions. So to recreate that element, which I think is really important, that people get face time with these subject matter experts, we're bringing back our community lounge. The Minneapolis Foundation is sponsoring our community lounge again this year, and it's a virtual community lounge where for 15 minutes after each main stage session, you can pop into the community lounge. Hopefully most of the speakers can spend the time to go there, and you can actually get on a video chat with them and ask your questions and have that opportunity to get FaceTime, and then also hear the questions that other people are asking, and get educated that way and network. And then that you mentioned how in the past startup week, it's like you can't see everything because there's so much going on, and we're still going to have that. There's still going to be this element of like frenzied energy of, oh my gosh, there's way more sessions that I want to see than I could ever physically attend, because they will be overlapping with each other in our session rooms. And those are more interactive, where you can actually go in and listen to, those are where we're putting like workshops and more interactive sessions where you can also get on video with the presenters and ask questions in real time and have a conversation. And those are stacked. You know, we'll probably have 3 or 4 of those going on at a time every day of Startup Week. So there's still, I think that actually is one of the benefits of Startup Week, where you're like, wow, there's so much amazing content. I can't see it all. But unlike past years, everything's going to be recorded. And we are launching we're launching a content library on the Startup Week website. If, you know, as Startup Week gets in full swing, when you go to Startup Week, TwinCityStartupWeek.com, you'll be able to go into that content library if you have a ticket and watch sessions that maybe you missed or maybe you want to watch again. So that's a great resource that people can access year round if you're a ticket holder. And then we have a virtual sponsor expo booths that you can go and interact with companies who make Startup Week possible. And then if you, I don't know if you both were able to attend Beta Showcase, but we have this really cool speed networking element where you literally get, you go into speed networking and it says, okay, I'm going to match you with somebody. And it just pairs you with somebody random who's attending Startup Week that day, and you have 5 minutes. And so it's a quick conversation. And then there's ways that you can say, hey, I want to share my information with you, or I want to continue this conversation. And you can share your LinkedIn or your email and keep those connections after Startup Week. And people love it. They love it because they're like, I don't have that awkward, like, I feel like this conversation has kind of run its course, but neither of us knows how to walk away. You know, like,
I was going to say, that sounds like, you know, there are some positives happening here.
It's great. It's great. And then if you're like, well, we really do want to continue this conversation, then you can both opt in. And then that's where, you know, a virtual coffee meeting, or hopefully soon we can have real in-person coffee meetings. But so that's, I think that's probably the biggest benefit of Hopin, is that you have a lot of these opportunities for connection. So I also wanted to point out that, okay, it's called Twin Cities Startup Week, but for 2020, it's going to be Twin Cities Startup Month. We are taking it, we're taking it in the
doesn't fit anymore into 1 week.
It doesn't. And, you know, we just recognize that, like, asking people to sit through 5 straight days of it's amazing content. I think people are really going to want to attend a lot of these sessions. So we want to make sure that we're giving people the breaks that they need and the time, and recognize that people still have to work probably during this time. So we are Twin Cities Startup Week kicks off the evening of September 7th. That's Labor Day. We're doing an in-person, like, come pick up your t-shirt, socially distant, like everybody's wearing masks, and you can do like literally a drive-by, get your swag, or it's going to be at a brewery. So if you want to go and sit out on the patio, if you want to make a reservation and go sit on the patio and conform to all of, you know, the Minnesota state health guidelines, there's that opportunity. But so that kicks off on the 7th, and then we have our tracks, our one-day tracks are coming back. So Tuesday, September 8th is sales and marketing track presented by Dynamico. Thursday, the 10th is our founder track. September 14th, is our fly-in fair. Like, I can talk about how we're taking the fly-in program virtual. Tuesday, September 15th is a tech track presented by AWS. I mentioned Fall Showcase, Beta Fall Showcase is on Wednesday, the 16th. Our healthcare track is on the 17th. Sustainability track presented by Northland Capital is on the 22nd. Minnesota Cup is happening, the big final awards, because they've also kudos to Jess, like figuring out how to bring that community together virtually. I know she's worked really hard to make that possible. So Minnesota Cup is happening. And then Food and Ag Track presented by Cargill is on the 24th. And then we have a closing party on the 25th. And then also Startup Awards, Minnesota Startup Awards, formerly known as Twin Cities Startup Week, Startup Awards. That Tech Down event is putting on. That's going to be the afternoon/early evening of September 24th. So we're bringing it all back in one form or another. We're making it really cool. When we're thinking of like, how do we make it fun to be on your computer all day? We're gonna utilize our virtual community hubs to do things like a pet parade. So every day during lunch, come hang out in the Minneapolis Foundation Community Lounge, bring your pet, maybe like teach them a special trick, or maybe have a special outfit that you want to show off. I don't know. Just little things like that. We're gonna have some Easter eggs hidden throughout the platform. So you may stumble upon, something really interesting in an expo booth that we're not really gonna promote ahead of time, because we want to encourage people to get in and explore and see what's going on. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Sounds pretty cool.
I think you've done a really good job of painting a picture of what the platform is going to look like. And that's difficult to do for something that is digital. But I love the visual of like walking into this platform and finding all of these things.
That sounds like some of the best parts of a conference, where like there's a way to go and navigate. You could pick this room or that room or that room without the awkward things of a conference, like that, you're talking to a person that you don't really need to be talking to, and there's no time limit on that. I like that feature already. Go ahead, Jack. You had another question, I think.
So for people that, are Twin City Startup Week diehards, and even for those that are not, how do they get started with this? What are the steps to get registered and find out what events are where?
Excellent question, Jack. Go to www.twincitystartupweek.com. And then on the main website, you'll see, look at the schedule, I think is what it says.
Schedule, yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
You view schedule, yeah. So in the upper right-hand corner of the website, it says view schedule. That will take you to the schedule page where we're using a scheduling app called Amamo this year. You can get your tickets. So the flow, we have a lot going on, because, due to like technical constraints and budget constraints, we've ended up stringing multiple platforms together to make Startup Week awesome. We're doing, we always use Eventbrite for our ticket sales and registration. We're doing our scheduling through Amamo, and now we're adding on, a virtual conference platform, because it's not in person. So that's Hopin. So you go in, you register with Eventbrite. That gives you access to be able to create an account in Amamo, where you get to build your custom schedule, and you'll get all the links to all the sessions, and it gives you access to Hopin. And I just want to tell people, like, buckle up, because as we're learning how all these platforms work together, you may get quite a few emails from different platforms telling you how to access that platform. And we're working on how to minimize that and streamline that process. But I just want to warn people that if you feel like you're getting a lot of emails, we apologize. Let us know. We are trying to address, like, how do we minimize the number of messages that people are getting. But if you
feel like you're getting a lot of emails, deal with it, archive them. Don't let Casey know, because clearly she already knows that. But
exactly.
If you haven't picked it out yet, this is hard to take a 200 event, 19,000 person thing and pivot it to be virtual and figure out the technology, figure out how to coordinate it. So I would argue that we should all keep our complaints or suggestions to ourselves and roll with it. I'm going to make it pretty simple for people. If you go to view schedule, there's a link that says get tickets. pick general admission for 25 bucks or pick VIP access for 100 bucks, because I'm sure the smart people listening know none of this is free. Hopin isn't giving this software away. And though there are some fantastic corporate sponsors that Casey has referenced, it needs the support of the people attending, and this content shouldn't be free. This is amazing stuff. I always do the VIP access because I get 5 times the value out of it. There is a freebie option for those that can't afford $25. I think there's probably an infinitesimal amount of people listening to this podcast, so everybody should pick general admission or VIP. VIP quickly, Casey, usually that gets you into certain exclusive events or happy hours, some smaller things, and a little extra swag. What is the VIP experience this year, if it's any different?
It is. So we are bringing the VIP hoodie back. So if you're a VIP person, you get a VIP hoodie. We are bringing, you get early access to some of the signature events like Beta Showcase, you get a VIP access to that. We're working on, I think we're probably going to have 5 or 6 actual VIP sessions, whether that's a private AMA with a local celebrity, or I mentioned that we are going to have some in-person events. So one of those is going to be our closing party is a socially distanced silent disco. And so we're going to make sure that people are safe, but they get out, they can have some beer, they can be dancing outside, away, in your pod. So things like that, if you're a VIP, you get early access to register. So on top of some other smaller VIP events that we are doing throughout the month. So thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So you touched on this, but could you talk a little bit about the fly-in program and how people can get looped into that?
So for people who aren't familiar with the fly-in program, and Kevin, you mentioned that's actually how one of the ways I ended up in Minnesota was through the fly-in program. The fly-in program is our opportunity to recruit highly skilled individuals from outside of Minnesota and connect them with companies who are hiring in Minnesota with the intention of that they want to move here. And it's been a really successful program. I think, on average, we have anywhere from like 45 to 50 people physically fly in and attend Startup Week and meet with hiring companies. This year, with the virtual nature, we're actually expecting over 200 people to attend. And so they get some special perks throughout Startup Week. And then we're actually doing a fly-in program career fair. We're calling it Culture Community Career Fair. And so if you're a company who's hiring and you're looking to bring in some highly skilled talent, we're seeing so much interest right now. I don't know if you've been watching, like San Francisco housing prices are just plummeting because people are like, I don't have to live here if I'm working. Yeah, and New York's the same way. So people, especially from the coast and expensive cities, are looking to relocate. And I think Minnesota, we have a really compelling proposition of like high quality of life, great schools, especially if you have a family. It's a great place to raise a family. So great job opportunities, great food. I could go on. But I'll save it for the community culture fair that we're putting on. So if you're a company who's hiring and you'd like to actually be a part of that fair and get access to all these fly-in people that we are sourcing, let me know. Again, shoot me an email, casey@beta.mn. There's some really affordable sponsorship opportunities to get plugged into that process. And the culture and the career fair is going to be like a 4-hour, let's tell you all the amazing things about Minnesota, like why you should move here. So we have, we're bringing back a lot of like the greatest hits of people who we've had over 45 people move to Minnesota through the fly-in program, probably more than that, because then they tell their friends and their friends move here. So it's a very successful program, and we'll be bringing people to share about like their experience moving here as a fly-in, and then also bringing in some local chefs and artists to talk about like what makes Minnesota really cool to live in.
Can people still sign up for that?
Yes, I will send you guys the application. If you are a person who does not live in Minnesota and you'd like to, or even if maybe you live in greater Minnesota and you're interested in moving to the Twin Cities to work for a company, I'll send the link to Jack and Kevin, and that can go out in the show notes.
Yep.
Yep,
We can
in the show
drop
notes,
them
but
in
if
there.
you're listening, just go to twincitiesstartupweek.com. There's a link at the top in the header for the fly-in program. Really cool that it's in, you're getting that. Again, this is a, crisis creates opportunity, right? So, okay, this has to be a purely virtual thing, but that means instead of limiting the number of tickets and expense applied to the fly-in program, instead of having 20 people this year, there could be 200. So that's awesome. And the community culture career fair sounds like something I will attend just because it sounds cool. And it has been super successful. You're one of 4 people I know personally, Casey, who have benefited from the fly-in program and ended up finding a job here. So if you're listening from outside the Twin Cities, you're interested in moving here because you've heard now 50 plus guests talk about what they love about Minnesota. It's all real. There is plenty of growth happening here in the Twin Cities, plenty of jobs to be had, and a great culture and a personal experience to be had as well. So apply for the fly-in program ASAP.
So you're so much better at this than I am, Kevin.
I just like to keep it really simple.
Thanks.
Very specific calls to action.
Before we take it in for a landing, I just want to know, Casey, how are you doing? This has been a roller coaster of a year. And for somebody who's planning all of these events and who is a community builder and an organizer, like, how have you been faring?
First year in the head spot at the job. That's not easy.
And I'm pregnant. So worst timing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I literally found that out like right as the pandemic was starting.
We're not going to tell the baby that you said worst timing ever, because that might make him or her feel bad.
It's just one of the, it's just like, what else can I pile on?
Yeah.
is my feeling for 2020. It's like, what else can I pile on? So thank you for asking. I'd say I'm hanging in there. Again, I have to give a shout out to my team, like Kelly Buell, Jihan Belavan, Ario Daya, and then we have this amazing intern from St. Thomas named Grace Northamer. I don't want to tell too many people how amazing she is because I don't want her to get poached because she's the best. But I would not be alive today. Like, I would be hiding under my bed in the fetal position if I did not have such an amazing team literally propping me up and like getting so much stuff done. And their enthusiasm and their excitement for the work that we're doing, it has really helped sustain me in this work because it is a roller coaster. You're like, okay, let's just like figure it out. And then you're like, then you go down the trough and you're like, everything is horrible and nothing's going to work and startup week's going to be terrible and everybody's going to be mad at us. And then, and then I got an email from Susan Langer this morning or last night that she was just like, hey, I just want to know that you're doing such a great job. Like, I see how hard you guys are working. And then that like brought me back up and I was like, okay, people care. It's like people can see that we are trying so hard and they're being really understanding that this is a messy process and it's going to be, we're trying to work out all the bugs and we're trying to make it as positive as possible. And, but we are a small and mighty team with limited resources. So just the fact that the community engagement has met us where we're at and been like kind of rawing us to continue. We had more submissions for Startup Week events this year than we have in past years. So obviously people are engaged and yeah, this is the first year that we also limited the number of events on the calendar really. And so we had to make that tough decision of not everybody made it, which is always the ultimate goal because you want to continue that quest for high quality. But so there have been great things that are happening and, we're trying to maximize like being able to record sessions and, create this content library that we haven't been able to do in the past and while learning platforms for the first time. So
Yeah.
I don't know. The answer is I actually don't know how I'm doing, but we're still kicking. We're just gonna power through. And then I'm taking a vacation for 3 months called maternity leave.
When's the baby due?
She's due December 4th. So we'll see if I make it that long.
That's exciting. So for those listening, more, and shout out to Susan Langer. She's been a guest on the podcast and is a wonderful person. More of the rah-rah emails and feedback to Casey and the team. And if you have suggestions for improvement, keep those to yourself for the time being, because putting on an event this big and this complex is hard under normal, ideal circumstances. Doing so in 2020 is incredibly difficult, and I'm super excited about this year, even more excited than I was before because of the way you've described
Same.
Startup Week. It's always a fantastic event. It sounds like we'll be able to harness all the same energy, et cetera. So I have already registered my VIP ticket. If you're listening, as soon as this podcast is finished, go and register. General admission for $25, better choice VIP for $100 to help make it happen and get a fly hoodie. Yeah, I'm super excited. Let's get into it, Casey. I can't wait for September to get here. So Jack's giving me a high sign. We've got to bring it in for a landing. We usually ask, what do you love about Minnesota? Casey, you've touched on some of it, but I'm gonna add, you've teased some like celebrity guests. Is there one person that's going to be participating in Startup Week that is new this year that you are personally most excited about participating?
You'll have to register to find out.
Oh,
Which you already did, but stay tuned for announcements, especially those who have VIP tickets, to see who we have up our sleeve. So
good answer.
Good answer.
but thank you for asking.
So kind of along those veins, but maybe an event that you're really excited about that people should know about and check out.
Yeah, so as a lot of people who are probably tech.mn enthusiasts know, Mary Grove and Brett Broll announced their new joint venture, Bread and Butter. And they're actually doing a really cool thing where they are going to be doing live pitch feedback during Startup Week. So on the main stage, I believe during the founder track, if you want to actually see what it's like to pitch to a VC and the kind of feedback that actually most VCs don't give good feedback. So this is going to be a really unusual opportunity for startups to get real and candid feedback from VCs of like what they often are thinking but won't tell you. So I think that's going to be a really exciting session, and I highly recommend people to check that one out.
That'll be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Casey, first and foremost, congratulations on the baby. I didn't know. That's exciting. Happy for you.
Thanks.
And I am super excited about Startup Week. Thank you for coming in as usual and telling the story, getting people excited about it. We will point as much traffic as we can to register, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. This might be the best Startup Week ever, despite all the challenges that you're dealing with. So super excited. We'll maybe, do a quick spot during Startup Week to get your take. We're going to be doing some in the moment podcasting, get a debrief at the end, but always appreciate everything you do for the tech and entrepreneurial community here in Minnesota. So keep it up, hang in there, and good luck with Startup Week.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Jack. It's always fun to come on the podcast.
All right.
All right. And that's a wrap.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Work, Casey.